Hello, this is Pastor Hank Kunneman here at Lord of Hosts Church right here in Omaha, Nebraska. Friday, February 25th. Happy Friday or happy Saturday, depending upon where you're watching around the world. I wanted to come to you today because there is a lot that is going on by way of Ukraine and Russia, the conflict that's taking place. Obviously, the media has been reporting certain things. Some is truth, but yet other things we question as the validity of really what is going on. Because there is and has been propaganda, there's been lies. This is not an accusation, it's the fact, it's truth that has been coming from the media for quite some time. I mean, do we have to be reminded of the fake Russia collusion, the different things that we've had to believe concerning even our election here in the United States, and the list goes on and on and on. Why would we believe anything different that we're being told the truth or half-truth or maybe not even the truth at all? I'm not saying that there isn't a conflict. I'm not certainly saying that innocent people, they're being affected by this. And unfortunately, that is why war is never good. It's the effects of war. But I want you to know that I have friends both in Russia. I've been to Russia. I've also been to Ukraine. I have friends there. And I am praying for both Russia and Ukraine. And I would encourage you to do the same. One of the things that is always the challenge whenever a prophetic word comes forth is, Elijah would be a great example. He prophesied about a famine. And yet, not only did he have to be part of that famine, but there were innocent people that were affected by that famine, or you could say the prophetic word. So whenever a prophetic word goes forth, especially when there is a conflict, a war, there's a battle, innocent people have been harmed or hurt, it's our call to pray. But also we have to look at what is the bigger picture? What is God saying? And so what I'm going to do is have a special Prophetic Pulse conference call, which will be this Wednesday coming up, March 2nd, at 7 p.m., but I felt like I needed to address prophecies that the Lord has spoken. For example, there was a prophecy that was given just a few weeks ago where the Spirit of the Lord began to declare that there would be what was called war rhetoric that would come from the media. The prophecy did not state that we wouldn't see a battle between Russia and Ukraine. What it said is that there would be certain media rhetoric, war rhetoric, which means there's a certain agenda to make something look a certain way. He also talked about in that prophecy that there was something that God was speaking to Putin of Russia. And we're going to talk about these things. We're going to talk about what is it that is causing there to be this war rhetoric. It's interesting that there's been this conflict at this time. It's been an amazing distraction. Notice how they're not talking about COVID-19. They're not talking about convoys. They're not talking about the freedom movement. They're not talking about protests. It's kind of gone to the side. Notice how the Durham report, which just happens to trace Hillary Clinton back to Ukraine and some of the corruption and leaders that are there in Ukraine, that's not being talked about. It's being passed over. What about Hunter Biden's laptop? What about Biden and their dealings of multi-millions of dollars? What were they doing in the Ukraine? That's not being talked about. So there's a lot that is going on that God is going to continue to shed light on. We're going to look at some prophecies. There's actually some prophecies about, what God's plan is for the Ukraine. What's God's plan concerning Putin? Is he going to take over Ukraine? God makes it very clear in a prophecy from 2018 that we're going to discover that the Lord is dealing with Putin and that there is something that God is going to do that is going to actually liberate Ukraine and is going to bring where there's been ashes, which, if there's ashes, it means there's been some kind of conflict or some kind of war, that God is going to bring something very beautiful out of this. And so we have to look at that. There's prophecies from 2020 that talk about God saying that there is 4 nations that form a frame. And if you look at this, the top is Ukraine, then underneath it is Iran, then over here is Russia and China, and it forms a frame. And God says that they're forming something, these nations, and there's been something that's been going on in the middle of this frame of these four nations that have to do with money laundering, has to do with trafficking, and major corruption that they didn't realize as they're framing their agenda. They didn't get the picture. God has framed them, and He's bringing this to light, and He's exposing them. And so we're going to talk about that as well. We're also going to talk about a prophecy from 2004 where the Lord really speaks about what is God going to do in Ukraine? What is His purpose? What's the redemptive plan? And again, whenever there's something that happens in the earth, God always has a redemptive plan. That's a plan of help and a plan of hope. Well, what is that? Well, God told us ahead of time what He's looking at with Ukraine, what He's looking at with Russia, and we're going to discover some amazing truths. And it's amazing that it's not stuff that you're going to hear on the media. Always keep something in mind whenever things happen. You know, people have a tendency sometimes to take the word of the media as the word of the Lord. That's why God raises up intercessors. He raises up anointed leaders. He raises up anointed politicians. And He raises up those with a prophetic grace to see beyond what people are projecting, what is happening, what they're saying, what they want us to believe, or really what is actually happening. What is God doing? What is God's perspective? What is God's involvement, and what will be the outcome? That's why we need prophetic eyes, we need prophetic ears, and we need prophetic understanding. And that's why I'm going to come to you with my wife Brenda this Wednesday, March 2nd, for our live Prophetic Pulse conference call. And we're going to break this down, and we're going to talk about some things. And I know you're going to be deeply blessed. And of course, we're going to pray for you, but we're also going to pray for our precious brothers and sisters in the Ukraine, as well as Russia itself. And I'm telling you, this thing is going to turn out the way that God has declared. And you're going to see from conflict will come something amazing that is going to be the healing of these nations, and also bringing accountability to those that have really done some very evil things, that righteousness and justice demands that takes place, and that's what God is doing. Again, I want you to join us March 2nd, this Wednesday, Prophetic Pulse conference call. We're going to break down these prophecies. In the meantime, continue to pray, and again, when you hear the prophecies, you look at the prophecies, do what Jesus said 15 times in the New Testament. Let those who have ears to hear what the Spirit of God is saying. In other words, don't jump to conclusions. Don't believe everything that they're saying. Learn to hear from your spirit man what's on the inside of you, because that is where the voice of God's truth will give you a witness and a peace that this is truth. And it'll also help guide you in troubling times, where Jesus said, be of good courage when trouble and tribulation happens. In other words, don't get all worked up about it. Maintain peace. God's got this. I'll see you there. Bless you.